Hi, welcome to Huge Fans. It's Liz.
And Catherine.
And Ed.
And John.
All right, we're going to take on what I consider one of the true badass blondes in the business.
Badass, for sure.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
Now, I threw a little more accent on there than may be necessary.
Well, typically, I will just throw this in right at the top, that most people say Charlize Theron, right? Like, that's how you normally hear it. But I just watched a whole bunch of her in interviews, and she actually, in her, native...
South African.
Yeah, she's a native of South Africa, and her first language was Afrikaans, and she will say that her last name is Throne. On a throne. So
well, geez.
I know.
How
I mean,
apropos.
Absolutely. So I think when she says it, it's real fast. It's like Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron. I'm like, wow, I can barely even. So but she is very accepting of the Americanized pronunciation of Charlize Theron, which is what normally we hear. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Liz.
Well, so she was born in 1975, which makes her 47 now, which is unbelievable. What a beauty. In South Africa, but really has made her reputation and her career primarily here in the United States.
Yes.
So she has been multi-nominated. Her background, she has a very fascinating early life.
I could start with a little bit of, she grew up just outside of Johannesburg.
Right.
I guess her family were mechanic farmer types. Like, she lived on a farm.
Could not be further away from the business.
Very interesting. And I don't know if most people know this, but tragically, her father was an alcoholic.
Abusive alcoholic.
Yes. And at 15, Charlize witnessed her mother in self-defense shoot her father. Right. Which I kind of remembered that, but then doing research for this podcast was like, oh yeah, oh God, wow, that's not fun. And then I think at about 15, her mom sent her to Europe basically to try and get a modeling career going, which she accomplished, and then came back to South Africa for a bit, and then I think came to America.
To New York. And I think there was Miami in there as well. There was also dancing in there. She was a ballet dancer.
Yes.
But ballet is so hard on your body. I think eventually...
It was pretty soon. She said her knees, a knee injury.
Her knees gave out, which I think is very typical. Usually your body, just ballet is so brutal, you eventually you might become a teacher, but your body gives out. So definitely a beautiful and tall enough woman to be a model.
Oh, for sure.
But had greater aspirations for herself and wanted to have an acting career.
Yeah, I like her getting discovered, in air quotes, at 19 in Los Angeles. I guess she was at a bank trying to cash a check. She was down to her last $400, and she was trying to cash a modeling check. But because it was from out of town, because most of the modeling she had done, was in New York or whatever. So she's trying to cash this out of town check at this bank and getting, I don't know if it was irate or loud or whatever, but making enough
probably
of
a little desperate.
Yeah, and then basically the man who ended up representing her went over to help, and then was like, "Hey, I mean, I could represent you," and anyway. So
that's I heard a little bit of the story, that same story, that he cashed the checks for her.
What? Oh, I didn't know this.
Gave her a card and said, "I'm a manager," and she's like, "Cool." Her and her friend, who were at the bank, put the card in the car. Left, they're like, I just got discovered. Card goes, into the dashboard somewhere. They forget about it until a couple nights later. They're out with some friends. One of the friends sees the card in the car, recognizes the name because this is before the internet, and is like, no, that's a real guy. Call him.
Oh my gosh!
That's how her career got started.
Wow, that's a very cool part of the story that I had not heard.
That's a modern version of being discovered at the soda fountain.
I mean, completely.
It's like, okay,
amazing.
Yeah, so I think that we'll kind of fast forward through some of her childhood and young adult years because, like we said, it was, South Africa. Her childhood was very tumultuous with her mother due to the...
She's very close with her mother now still. I mean...
We'll get into... Yeah, I actually met the mother.
Yeah.
And, Joffrey Ballet, even in New York, very serious. Her life could have gone in different directions. But because of that check that would not be cleared.
That is an amazing.
In Los Angeles. But she was in Los Angeles, and her mother has always been a huge...
advocate?
Yeah, and promoter of her to say, go for it, go for it, go for it. So she was in Los Angeles trying to make it...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, something like her mom said, why not? go for it when she was talking about going to Los Angeles and trying to become an actress. You don't want to be looking back at 80 and wondering if.
Right. It's great advice. And I will say, I think most people know that, New York is the mecca of modeling, really, for the most part.
Yeah.
There really is not, there's a modeling industry here in LA, but it's still primarily New York. So for her to come to Los Angeles, she was putting that on the shelf.
Oh, yeah. She was pursuing acting at that point. Yeah.
So I guess she gets discovered, by this talent agent. His name was John Crosby. So shout out to you for having a good eye at the bank.
Good job.
So there you go. And she got her first non-speaking role in 1995 in the horror film Children of the Corn 3.
Which is funny because with her blonde hair, that really fits with Children of the Corn. I don't remember seeing it because obviously,
those of you that follow us at all on maybe our other podcasts of what we are watching,
we're
the Kilmans are not horror people for the most part. My husband is, so I have slowly been brought in, but no. Children of the Corn, Weird Children? No.
But they were all blonde. I do remember that.
Well, because it's rooted in, we're going to digress for a second, but Twilight Zone. That's really that amazing episode, Wishing You Into the Corn. I mean, those kids were scary as shit. So nothing changed. So number 3, I did not really even know there was a 1 or 2, but number 3.
I do love that it's number 3. That's hilarious.
So to make a mark in Hollywood, like what's going to make you stand out? Why are people going to go, who the hell is that? Can take a long time. Mm-hmm. What is amazing about her? So she does Children of the Corn. Please, I don't know who saw that, didn't see that.
Well, she was a featured extra, and they even dubbed over her screams, so you might have missed her.
Yeah. So, I think it can be difficult to make your mark, right? You're just starting out. You do a bit part that I didn't know her scream was dubbed over. Oh, my God. So you're like, oh, my God, my scream didn't even make it. So, but that's 1995. And a year later, she basically has 2 films, but the first one listed is 2 Days in the Valley, and that is for sure where I went, who the hell is that? So 2 Days in the Valley, if you have not seen it, I think it still stands up. It is about 48 hours in Los Angeles where a crime takes place and the overlapping lives that it affects.
I mean, and the Valley, which is where we live. So
and there are parts of it, San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, a suburb, you would recognize because they still sort of are still in existence in some ways. Mm-hmm. So she plays what is not a huge part, right? Because the female lead was Terry Hatcher. And Danny Aiello was one of the leads, and Glenn Headley was in it. I mean, you had recognizable names, but it kind of was an independent film. So James Spader, which, like, how can you not love him, was playing an evil badass as usual, very non-emotional. And she plays his girlfriend, Helga. Mm-hmm. Like a bob-length blonde hair, super tight clothes, stunningly gorgeous, and probably because of her ballet background, the fight scene that happens between her and Terry Hatcher. I mean, 2 gorgeous women battling it out for their lives. You would have to be dead not to be turned on. Male, female. Like it was these 2 titans battling each other. And really, at this point, Terry Hatcher had been around a while. Her background, television and film, but it was a good role for her. No one knew who Charlize was. So it was just like, who is this blonde who is carrying her own among all these established actors, doing a very challenging fight scene. I don't want to blow how it ends because you should watch it. So you have choreography, you have blood, battling, James Spader love scene, like a lot going on for your second film. Like,
good job.
I mean, I heard her talk about the audition for this movie.
No.
She went in a cat suit.
Oh, good move.
Like crawling on the ground in the scene that she's like shot. And either she did or she didn't, because there's a couple interviews. Some she's maybe not owning it yet. Later on, maybe she is owning. She brought a ketchup bottle and squirted it all over herself to get shot in the scene.
Stop.
For the moment.
Brilliant.
Wow, good for her.
Just like she kind of like owned it immediately. And they couldn't figure out who else to cast, according to her.
Nice.
Well, she gave it all.
Yeah.
Now, you will say, and there have been rumors about kind of how Terry Hatcher, who was supposed to be the female lead, you look at the poster, and it is her. It is literally Charlize. You would just think she's the lead. So I think there were some rumors of disgruntled, annoyed about it.
Sure.
But you know what you want to say to anybody in Los Angeles now? It's like anything that can make your movie stand out and be a hit, can get you attention, you should be all on board for, at least publicly. I mean, like, are you out of your mind? So for a second movie, very prestigious. I think it was a John Hirschfeld film, which he had been around Los Angeles for a long time doing like bigger films. So just in that regard, to go from a horror film to that, then followed up by
That Thing You Do, that Tom Hanks movie.
1 week later.
1 week later, in terms of release dates?
Yep.
Wow,
well,
crazy.
That is the way to put your foot down, like, hi, I'm here, Hollywood, and a very different type of role.
And Tom Hanks's directorial debut. So kind of like the set you'd want to be on if it's going to be Tom Hanks and you. You know, acting's fine, but his first directing role? Yeah.
So you get a lot of attention.
Yeah, that's going to get a lot of attention.
And I think that, you know, although both films, she was playing a girlfriend, not the lead, the sidekick, it was memorable enough and
different, so it shows her chops
right,
too. Yeah,
and also surrounded by an amazing cast and crew. So that agent, I think maybe it was still John Crosby from the bank. Wow, dude, way to look out for her choices, because that's, you know, I mean, to go from Children of the Corn 3, probably just to get her SAG card, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and get on something.
Yeah,
it was an audition that she had after that for Showgirls. That talent agent.
Wait, Showgirls?
She didn't get the role. That's why it's not in any of her lists.
Well, I know she did. That is an iconically bad movie.
She auditions for it.
She avoided that.
The casting director, Jonah Ray, sees her and realizes, oh, this person's got it. She needs an agent. You don't have an agent? And then she gets her in contact with J.J. Harris, who then she works with for like the next 15 years until J.J. Harris passes.
That was such a lucky break. She did not get cast in Showgirls.
Yeah.
Well, and that pretty much started off, which now, you know, we're 2022. You're talking about in 1995. So it's been about 26 years. She has been steadily working as what you consider. They have ways of categorizing celebrities. She falls into the category of a movie star.
Oh, yeah. A-list movie star. Yeah.
A-list movie star. And very soon got herself in that position, which is incredible, and maintained it.
Right. And then we're going to talk about, as we go chronologically, when she sort of jumped the line and started producing. And that is a whole nother area that she's really killing it.
And then The Devil's Advocate.
That was actually for me the first time.
For sure as well.
Oh, okay.
That was the first time I was like, who the F is this? It's a great performance.
Once again, it's a girlfriend, but a lot of layers.
Yeah, she's stunning. It's pivotal in that, like, in the story, she has like a real crazy breakdown, you know, arc that happens. And I did hear in an interview, it was very interesting, that the director initially didn't want to cast her because he thought she was too beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
Because I guess part of the story is that Keanu Reeves' character is going to be tempted by other women. And they were like, is that realistic?
Why would you ever?
Exactly. They were like, how would he be tempted by other women if, like, this is what he is married to? What? Like, no. And then also they use the term the blood sacrifice. Like, she's the one that within the story ends up getting the worst part of the whole deal because she kind of goes crazy. And,
also because opposite Al Pacino. I mean, really?
Well,
wow.
I mean, come on. Good for... Yeah.
But she can see through Al Pacino.
I know. So I guess
that's what drives her crazy.
I know. She said she had to do 4 screen tests, not even auditions, like full, like, she really had to fight for this. And she was like, but I knew that this was like such a good, meaty, this is the kind of work I wanted to be doing. And as you said, working against like Al Pacino, come on, you want that. And she was like, no, I needed to go for it, and I really pushed.
Taylor Hackford as the director is very well known. I mean, that was a great role for her to get. And I remember there was that scene, I think it is in a church, where she really starts to have the mental breakdown.
Is it a church or is it a mental hospital?
Well, definitely
I think there's a couple breakdowns.
Yeah, the mental hospital one, doesn't she? I was going to, like, if you haven't seen it, that would be a big spoiler. But the mental hospital is real devastating.
If you haven't seen it, 30 years ago.
I know. Well, I feel
Thanks
bad
for listening to this podcast because we're recommending you go and watch it now.
But also, I mean, sometimes things are, you know,
off their radar.
Yeah, it's not on their exactly.
Or they're only 20.
Exactly. And they're like, "What are you talking about? What is Devil's Advocate?" Like, the only thing I know are the more recent things. Like, no, go watch this.
I did watch an interview with her from that, like the junkets around that time.
The
from
press
that
at the time.
And she said that, yeah, I'm not recommending the home viewing audience does this, but for the 10-day shoot that we did that, I knew I needed to be disconnected from reality. I needed to be in a troubling place for that character and for it to be bought. And so I was on like a no substance diet. I just had this weird green bad tea. And by the 3rd day, I thought I belonged in that mental hospital.
Geez.
It was like rough. But there you go.
That's interesting because I did hear her talk about in one of the interviews that I watched, she doesn't typically immerse herself. She said for her own mental health, she got very good at realizing that, like, oh no, I need to take my makeup off, leave my trailer and leave it behind because otherwise I can't recharge my battery. I don't have the energy to do the performance the way I need to. So she said she has attempted method style acting where she's really immersive, and she's like, it's too draining. It's too emotionally draining, and I don't have what I need to actually do the performance then, and to like go to the places that I need to go to. I need to. And she said, this was a more recent interview because now she has 2 daughters, and she said now it's really easy because as soon as I leave, I got to go home to my 2 kids and my dog poop that I need to pick up. It's just, I am very able to go, okay, I'm done with this for today. And she said sometimes her mind will spin at night where she thinks about the work that she did that day or what's coming up, but typically she doesn't like sit in the role. So that's interesting to hear that she actually, maybe that was one of the things that she was like, oh, I don't want to do that again. That was no good. Yeah. Devil's Advocate was really hard and no thanks.
Well, that's really impressive because her portrayal of characters is so varied. And they're so committed because a lot of them are really physical, and we'll get to them, physically demanding. You would think she's working the method because I don't ever feel like she's giving you half a performance.
Yeah, I think she actually does this thing where she's a little more, she said, more spontaneous. Just like drop yourself into the moment and really commit in that moment. But then she's able to walk away after, which is good for her because that's working for her.
Now, we're not going to do every single movie because this is someone... she works so much. She has so much. So I feel like
I would skip to Astronaut's Wife. That was the next big thing that I was like, ooh, she's a super duper lead.
Well,
in that.
Don't forget, just one little mention, Mighty Joe Young was the remake of basically King Kong. And
not King Kong. It was a separate movie because I was a big fan. Well, Mighty Joe Young, the original movie, I forget what year it was.
1949.
1949. So, but I was a big fan of it. It was like a black and white kind of hokey, probably didn't look great, like stop motion animation. It's similar to King Kong in that it's a giant gorilla or ape or what. Yeah, I guess gorilla. I was going to say ape, and that's wrong. A giant gorilla.
I can't believe you don't know exactly what kind of.
I know what kind of primate. Yeah, I know. Primate, but I don't remember loving this movie.
I still loved her in it. Yeah, she looked freaking gorgeous.
I think it was just because I was such a super fan of the original movie that I was like, I don't know if you can do as good a job as this 1940s one that broke my heart. Like what?
Yeah. All right. So now The Astronaut's Wife, which is 1999, and she plays opposite Johnny Depp.
That's right.
Once again, sort of like the wife, partner, female, girlfriend role.
But also like suspicious of him and like, so she had some things going.
Been.
I know, she had some really good things going on.
But gosh, already getting with some of the time top
big stars.
I mean, that's her career. She's from the beginning. And continuing, she is with all the other movie stars.
Yeah, even if the movies don't do great, it's always a team up of somebody huge.
Yeah, you almost could. It's like, the 6 Degrees of Separation from Kevin Bacon. It's like
6 Degrees of Charlize Theron. That's our new game.
Yeah, it's actually 2 degrees.
2 degrees.
For most people in Hollywood, yeah. So in the box office and all that, I don't know if that was like considered a huge hit, but you understood why she did it. The next one, Cider House Rules, also the same year. This is one of the things like, damn, she was busy. Like once she started, there was not a year that she was not dropping at least 2 films.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So that one I do know was pretty critically well received and did well in the box office. And the opposite that, I will say, there is a moment where Tobey Maguire plays the opposite of her. And listen, she's so gorgeous. God bless her. She's just, and this is why a later choice happens because of, she wanted to change this, like, look at me besides just my beauty, because she's super freaking talented. There's a moment, Lars Hellstrom, I think is the name of the director, very well known, shoots beautiful films. There's this scene where Toby comes in and she's lying, I think, naked on her stomach on like what would be almost like a horse stable or like the barn, and he comes in and it's like, there's just no plan in the world that Tobey Maguire and Charlize Theron make sense together. Sorry. Like, I was like, she is a goddess on earth. Like,
she is a goddess.
I am like, no. No, I mean, I guess circumstance, maybe because the time the movie is, maybe it takes place in the 19.
Oh yeah, no, that time period. Tobey Maguire, he's the hottest they got.
No,
he's the top tier. He's the 10 out of 10. So that's what she's.
I was going to say it's more the problem of maybe you just Homer Wells, the orphan, if in Maine. So maybe you're stuck in Maine and can't get anywhere. And it was
also wasn't he becoming a doctor? That's who you want back then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I mean,
it seemed a tad implausible, but
I mean, just a little bit, right? I'm just trying to think. It was I want to say it was the 1940s or something. I just remembered it was
Is that why it makes sense? Still no.
She was so stunning in this movie, and you're just like Tobey Maguire. Sorry, it was I'm trying to believe this, but you're like, oh man. I mean, hey.
He is Spider-Man.
Well, he wasn't then,
later.
but yeah, okay.
Then he was just Peter Parker.
But if anything, it shows what an incredible actress she is because, she really committed to no, Tobey Maguire.
Seem believable.
I'll make Tobey Maguire work. And you're like, with his cracky kind of voice, no. Okay, but she, literally the way they lit this one scene and the way she looked in it is one of those cinematic moments in my mind that is seared of, just beauty on film. Holy perfection moly. Okay, so that's on that one.
Holy perfection moly. I do love that. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Trademark it. No, just kidding.
Sorry, I just had to look that up because I was like, how old were those two in that movie?
Young.
He always looks younger, Mr. Maguire.
That was another problem. He looked way too young.
And they are 6 weeks apart in age.
Oh.
So, I don't understand
She's
that
definitely
at all.
2 inches taller than him in real life.
2 inches? I would
I don't
have
know.
said more, but... Okay, so then we have Men of Honor, and then we have Bagger Vance. Bagger Vance was a pretty big deal.
The Legend of Bagger Vance?
Oh, sorry. The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Directed by...
Robert Redford.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely,
That's your coronation, man.
Yeah.
If he's cast... There are a couple directors, and she's already worked with a few of them, but a Robert Redford's not casting you unless he thinks you are the real deal.
There's a line that she said in one of the many interviews that I watched getting ready for this podcast that she was talking to Robert Redford and she was trying to discuss the logic of how this was going to go to that. And he's like, it's magic.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. And she just was like, oh,
okay.
Right, we're making movies. It doesn't
Movie
have to actually
magic.
connect. That seems like something that she has locked in and probably clicks many, many times as she's making these movies. It's fine. It's magic.
Don't
Movie
worry.
magic.
Well, particularly,
These are movie people.
The Legend of Bagger Vance had a magical quality about the story. So
Right.
whenever it didn't make logical sense, don't worry about it. It's magic. So,
And I think that, we're still dealing with at this point, she is part of an ensemble. Mm-hmm. Or like I said, she's not the lead. Usually the male is the lead. Even when you jump to Sweet November in 2001, her second film with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the direction you're going in. But it's you got to imagine there was a process going no, we're going to get you into a lead position.
Yeah, I'd say the next big, and this again was more of an ensemble, is The Italian Job. So that, I mean, at least I know for that, she really fought to be considered no, I can be one of the drivers. I think initially they were yeah,
Yes.
you aren't going to drive. And she's like, no, I want to do this driving training and I want to drive.
That worked out great. I mean, this is one of my career highlights for her, of enjoyment at least. She's so incredibly fun.
Yeah, she's great in it.
Plus, then she knows how to drive for all other driving movies in the future. No spoilers here.
But only Mini Coopers.
Yeah. It's funny because I think it's Vanity Fair does one of those quick question things. And one of the questions was, what are you really good at? And she's like, driving. And I don't mean a little bit good. Yeah, I'm really a good driver. And I thought, yeah, because you actually got a boot camp of a month or something where they trained you to really drive, which is cool.
Yeah, that sequence, because it was after the original Italian Job, which was the beginning of the movie, where she's driving through the streets. You're unsure how in the world they actually did that. Because it's did you have 40 stunt drivers around her? I don't understand. This is amazing.
Well, I mean, that's a different kind of movie magic.
And, that was her being one of the boys. It wasn't so much a romantic role, although there's, I don't know how you're not around her and get...
Well, which is what happened to Mark.
Of course. I don't know how you wouldn't get, distracted is a nice word. Very distracted.
He did the Italian Job. He didn't get an Italian job.
Wait,
I don't know
what? I don't even think that's a thing.
That's not what we're saying. But no, he didn't get distracted. He did fall in love. I mean, these are two different things.
Yes, but I'm just saying like he should have stuck to the job, but you have Charlize right there.
He did both.
Kudos to you, Mark Wahlberg.
But I do like that she was not just there for eye candy. She was really part of the team and as a character.
Yeah, that wasn't even really part of it. That was just the end. It was like, oh, shocking. Yes, they got together. But that was not really part of the story as it went along.
Yeah. Okay, so now we hit Monster. So this is 2003. And I mean, I think the most amazing thing, I mean, obviously she won an Oscar for it because holy moly.
If you haven't seen it, it is based on the true life of Aileen Wuornos.
Yep.
Who
I think she was like the first woman to be executed.
Right. So she was a serial killer.
Or maybe the first female serial killer to be executed.
Right.
Like a couple things in a row.
And I think, that was shocking because there was a theory that female serial killers didn't exist.
Right.
So not only did she exist, but then this movie really delves into what makes a monster. And that's why it was called Monster. It was based on, her childhood trauma that made her a prostitute and some ways reactive to abuse. Mm-hmm. And that is what started her path of destruction. And this is a complete departure from Beauty, from taking on a role that would, you cannot not look at Charlize on screen because she's so gorgeous. The camera loves her. And she was redefining herself like, okay, now even the Italian job's like, I'm going to be kind of a badass. I'm going to be doing the driving and this and that. Monster was such a departure because she did things to make herself.
Yeah, she gained 30 pounds. Yeah.
Yes, very unattractive. Mm-hmm. And prosthetic teeth, skin, hair. And honestly, she'd been a male love interest, ingenue, all those type of things, right? And now she's also playing a lesbian. So it's such a departure. It's almost shocking, but the only way she basically got it done is like, she had to produce it herself.
This was her entree into producing.
Right.
And essentially, Patty Jenkins, directed by Patty Jenkins and written by Patty Jenkins, she had never directed anything before. So this was her directorial debut.
Both of them. I mean, wow.
And in an interview, Charlize says that was really why she put herself on there as a producer, because she knew that Patty would need the support for them to be able to make the movie that they wanted to make, because Patty didn't have any other directing credits, and that if she didn't go on as a producer, they might lose control of how this movie was made or where it was made, or and
especially with her self-attached, trying to be an unattractive woman.
Right.
There's a lot of executive dudes who are probably not into that.
No. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
But Charlize said that she was so impressed by the script and that what Patty wanted to do, she so agreed with. Mm-hmm. She was like, this was the move to make that happen, to come on as a producer. And not as like, it's funny, she talks a little bit about at that time, this is like a good 20 years ago, that actors getting a producer credit often was like a vanity credit. It was like, yeah, you get a producer credit, but you didn't
your
really,
agent negotiated that for you. Yeah.
Right. So, but this was really like, oh, no.
I mean, it's so funny. You have to be there anyways as the actor. So, but it's an agent going, it's another way to get another fee or squeeze something out or credit.
But this is the real producing of being super involved and making sure that the project goes the way you think it should go.
Yeah, small budget.
Oh, yeah. She said that kind of worked to their advantage, because once they got their financing and then they were shooting in Florida, and she's like, yeah, we were shooting in like gross alleys. So like our financiers didn't want to like come visit the set. And and then also it took like 2 or 3 days for dailies to get back to LA. So she's like, and we only shot for 24 days. So by the time they saw what we were doing, it was kind of too late. Like they
were shocked. I mean, I think when they realized, there was an element of them like, oh, she's going to look bad, but
I don't think they realized how deep and like going for it she was going to go.
Because she, as you said, the weight gain. This is, physically fit, gorgeous body, ex-model, ballet dancer. She looked, it was alarming. Well, you almost don't believe, like, I know it's not the same person, but like, wow.
And her physicality, like the way she changed how she moved was so perfect and dramatically different from her normal, very statuesque and flowy moves.
I think there had been a documentary about Aileen, so she was able to study her, and I think one of my favorites, Christina Ricci, who played her girlfriend Shelby, I think the actual real person still was alive and was able to talk to her. So they really did their research and put their heart and soul into it. And what a risk, because if it did not work, you're the lead. This is her first real lead You have completely veered away from anything vanity-based. You gave one of the most stripped-down performances about a truly undesirable character. Because some people would just go, well, it's a serial killer, right? But because they showed, like I said, this background of like, how do you make a monster? Why does someone become this way? Because they did that and also showed her affectionate side with her lover. You just thought, oh my gosh, there's so many things that could go wrong here if you didn't get the tone right, if you didn't get the story right, the edit right, all of it. If the teeth didn't play, did the teeth play?
The teeth were pretty horrible.
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting about it is once they got it all made, then they had to find a distributor. They didn't have a deal to sell it. They made it. And then the next stage when you make a movie is like, okay, how is it going to get out there? And they were, I think she said days away from signing a deal with Blockbuster. Again, this is a dated thing, to go straight to video. And she said, and then a financier came in and bought the movie to actually distribute it. And had that not happened, they would not have qualified for Oscars. She certainly wouldn't have won. I mean, she was talking
to be in the movie theaters. Now we're dealing with a different world with streaming, where
that would have knocked him out for sure.
Well, because if you don't actually, I think back then, and I don't know if the rules have changed, but you had to be in the movie theater for at least 2 weeks. You have to actually been in the movie theater to be considered or be in the running for any awards. So
much less have money to then mount a campaign to get people aware of your movie. So one is just a technicality of you have to have been in a theater, but then you also still have to have the money to get people aware of your movie. Otherwise, forget it.
Right. I read this quote, Roger Ebert, one of the great film reviewers of all time. He said, one of the greatest performances in the history of cinema. And the film was chosen for the American Film Institute. It was the top 10 films of that year. So the risk paid off.
Oh, yeah. And
completely made the world look at her in an entirely different way. Because then you're a businesswoman too. Now as the producer.
Yeah.
And Patty Jenkins and her were really a team with all the interviewing. And because when you get nominated for awards, your film then has a much more extended life past what would be the typical in-theater experience.
Especially at that time. There's usually a re-release. There would almost,
they might have
released early enough or small enough that people wouldn't have seen it.
Right.
There weren't all of the screeners and streamers and stuff like that. They'd release it back in the theater at the end of the year so that the people in the Academy could go see it and then vote.
Yeah.
Right. So that really did take a huge pivot, the way the industry looked at her, both as a performer, as a producer.
Yeah.
All of it. It was like, oh, the range is much wider or bigger than probably anybody expected. And the other thing the industry always respects, it made a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
based on its budget versus box office. Yeah.
That's always a big one. If you make a lot of money, all of a sudden,
well, especially if you only spend this much, you turned a profit, because the books can always be cooked, so you don't. But at a certain point, when you get into, you've made 5 or 6 times what the budget was, it's really hard to be like, yeah, we did make money. Okay.
It's interesting that it's after this point in her career, because she's been pushing against the classic, you look pretty, so that's the roles that you're getting, and trying to craft an actual career for herself, that now that she's got some authority in her own direction, she didn't stop being herself. She kept trying new avenues, new things, other directions. At this point in her career, you don't ever have to dip into television, period. You're fine.
Wait, she did do that.
She did. But I'm saying, that's after she produces and wins Academy Awards and can dictate, no, I want to try other stuff.
So that was Monster. That was 2003, and probably took over the next year of her life between all the awards and accolades and press.
Well, she was nominated for North Country.
Oh, that's right. And that was another one not leaning on her beauty. I mean, that was like a single mom at a local iron mine in Minnesota. I mean,
and a sexual harassment lawsuit situation.
Right.
Not unionizing to get our hours down.
Right. And an amazing cast. I mean, Woody Harrelson, Frances McDormand, and Sissy Spacek. That's one of those ones that, what do you follow up with? But there was a couple, we'll just say, other films in between. So Monster is followed by Head in the Clouds, The Life and Death of Peter Sellers. I do remember her being Brett Eklund in that movie.
Apparently, Brett Eklund was still alive and went to the premiere of that in Cannes. And after the big red carpet thing, she invited her to come watch it with her, which was apparently the worst decision she's ever made.
Oh, why?
What?
Having the real person sit next to you, watch the movie with you, is not cool.
Difficult, uncomfortable, awkward.
Very, very odd.
All right. Well, it could have been worse for the monster movie. So, I don't think this probably was easier to handle. So then we just talked about North Country. Let's get back into full,
super badass, sexy.
My God. But then such the physicalization. And she is, in 2005, a sci-fi based on animation that was very popular. We watched it primarily on, MTV?
Yeah, I think it was MTV.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Eon Flux was an animation, hypersexualized, end times, dystopian future world. But that was a animation. So now you're going to do a version where she's playing a real embodiment version of this character. So you're like, I can't imagine everybody was thinking, what is this costume going to be? Because the animated costume was crazy.
It's barely on.
Yeah, but she was so good in this role. There's a glacier element that she can tap into that there's a lot of emotions under there, but it is a very cool, methodical, you're scared shitless of her because she's not showing a lot of emotions, but there's enough that you're like, oh my gosh, what's she gonna do? You kind of felt a little bit of evil. We thought, ooh, she can play evil.
Yeah.
Because even though Eon Flux was not necessarily evil, the way she was battling, and there was if I was looking at performances, this was the first one you thought, oh,
she could be a bad guy.
That's another layer. Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of stunts in that too, physical stunts.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Actually, she
got injured real bad.
Injured real bad.
Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Gosh, that's scary because it is just going back to even the car driving from the Italian Job. She really does want to do her own stunts, and she does want to do her own action sequences. So that takes a toll, I guess. That's just crazy.
Then it was Arrested Development after that. Which was a ridiculous run of that little character. It was 5 episodes, and it's so memorable because it's such a wackadoodle thing that she did. You're like, wait, what? Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. I love that part of why Jason Bateman's character is interested in her and distracted by her is that she is so beautiful. And I just remember there's this one moment where they kind of divulge the whole she's actually special needs. And if you had seen her a year ago, it's because she has all this money and was able to get all this plastic surgery that she's so beautiful. And then they show the picture from Monster. I was like, okay, that is very funny to do that. Anyway, Arrested Development.
Well, that is a sign, and she hadn't really done comedy by this point. This is an also indication of her sense of humor, including about herself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? Because I have another little interesting story of kind of where she showed that side of her where she can be self-deprecating and have fun. And if you are a friend of hers, she's willing to participate and have fun with you.
Yeah.
Even though it might not make sense. What are you doing on Arrested Development?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. Getting back to her filmography. Then there's In the Valley of Ella, which most notably directed by Paul Haggis, which was a big deal. And then Battle in Seattle, I will say. Does anybody... Stuart Townsend, who was her...
longtime boyfriend at the time.
Yep.
He directed it as well.
Yeah, so that 2007. And then Sleepwalking, which literally says it's Bill Maher as the director. But it's not the Bill Maher that we think. So,
Well, the next one coming up, I'm super excited about. It was Hancock, which I loved.
And that was a Will Smith vehicle, and Peter Berg, who some of you might know from Friday Night Lights. So
directing, yeah.
Yeah, with Will Smith.
And talk about a goddess. Basically, she's playing a goddess.
Yes.
That completely works. I did love that movie, and it does also make you think oh, here's Jason Bateman again. You and Jason Bateman. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's fun.
That makes sense. That's a double. Because she had done Legend of Bagger Vance with Will Smith.
Right.
I hadn't caught that was a
she is quite a few double, if not triple dipping with certain people.
Well, that also speaks very well of your talent when you go back and work with same people, co-stars or directors or whatever. Yeah. And then I was going to jump to The Road, which I did not see because I was too scared because it's taking place in a real dark, bad future.
Right.
But that's the next big thing. And that was critically acclaimed. People were really into it. And then there's a couple things, and then
young adult.
Yeah, I was going to skip to young adult.
Yeah, you got to talk about young adult because that is when we talked about the double dipping. You have her relationship. I think this might have been her first time working with the writer Diablo Cody, who had won an Oscar as the screenwriter of the movie Juno.
Right.
So this was, I think, came after Juno, and it's called Young Adult, and she's the lead in it. And it's also directed by Jason Reitman.
He was also Juno.
Right.
And will be the other one in the future.
Yeah.
The three of them did these two together.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Those two had done Juno.
Yeah. And I think it was sort of a departure because it was like her playing an asshole.
Yeah, real unlikable. Just
and it was like
kind of a train wreck.
And you're sort of like, what? But it worked. Her talent as an actress, you holy moly. Okay. So now we have a little bit of villain and a little bit of asshole, right? Which leads us to the 2012 movie Snow White and the Huntsman.
Well, and also Prometheus is in there too, and that's kind of
that's
she's
true.
like an executive, so that's
the same year.
Yeah.
That's the same year. So she leaned into like, let me be a villain. And that's Ridley Scott. Oh my God. But sci-fi mystery. So evil badassness, like, let's the year of 2012.
Well, Prometheus a much smaller role than Snow White and the Huntsman. That was a big, meaty, bad girl.
Costumes, her look, her gorgeousness. So Snow White, it's a planned Snow White with, one of my favorites, Thor. Chris Hemsworth.
Wielding an axe before he eventually had the hammer that then turned into an axe.
Yes.
As long as we're clear on all of our...
And it's funny because he's really not as big physically as he works out himself into for Thor. Like, so he's definitely like, it's Chris Hemsworth, but you're like, wow, Thor, you are a bigger dude as Thor.
Yeah, when he does Thor, he really pumps it up.
Right. So she just played a deliciously diabolical villain.
Yeah.
And did such a good job of it.
And stunning, obviously.
Oh, completely unabashful, could not give two shits. I am going to be evil. So
kind of setting the entire, audience in the world up for some of the stuff she's got on deck.
Well, yes, but she'll mix it up right again afterwards. And it did very well in the box office. I mean, that was like a huge... Her 2012 box office almost totaled like $1 billion.
Holy crap.
Like that when you do numbers like that, it's like then you are bona fide. It's not debatable. Like that is crazy. And this was like an adult, it's Snow White. So to be able to like turn that into like, almost $400 million in box office is insane. So you have two, like I said, kind of evil characters, followed up by 2014, A Million Ways to Die in the West by Seth MacFarlane. And I think Seth MacFarlane, who some of you should know from The Family Guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
creator and multiple voices. Yeah.
And it was not animated. And that, it got to be his first lead film, And I really think it's a comedy Western. And you could tell they had a blast doing it, but what a departure. Like, what?
That's part of her willing to do wacky, fun things. Somewhere in there, she did Saturday Night Live. And aside from, other sketches, I do want to shout out that I am a big fan of the Heshy character. And I had previously forgotten. We talked about this in our Huge Fans podcast of SNL. There's this sketch that I loved, and I forgot that they reprised the Heshy character when Charlize came on. It was ridiculous. And again, this speaks to what Liz was saying, where she is definitely willing to like make fun of herself and like be goofy and play up the like, yes, I'm super attractive, but also I can be a real dork. So here we go.
Yeah,
it was really fun.
And she pulls it off, but it's kind of unbelievable. There's a couple coming up that you're like, how did you advocate for you to get this role for yourself? Because it's so hard to envision you that way.
There's also some of her interviews where she's talking about it's beyond just showing up to act. When you realize that everyone else here is also doing a job and they're taking that paycheck home to go pay, for their rent and food for their kids and stuff. So when you gain the trust of your team, everyone around you, like there can be a moment where your camera guy after a scene will like reach out and like console you a little bit because it was that real. You have that trust in these people because, and she's saying this, as an actress, I find it ridiculous that I have to like be in front of you and do this thing that I do, get into this character, say these lines. So some of her self still exists through all of that like she recognizes, oh, I'm lucky to be doing this. I need to show up because everybody else is here too.
That is very true. And I think the physicalization of the next role and the commitment to pull off Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015.
It was crazy. I heard her talking about it, and she said she committed to it before there was really even much of a script. It was like all just storyboard, drawings. And
right.
I think what was really interesting is she likes when a character has flaws and interesting things going on. And initially she was like, well, I don't really want to play a character who is just in there as the she's going to rescue these girls.
Right.
She's like, no, I need more. I need her to be more. And through the process of developing this film, she said, I wanted her to have something more going on. Like, what's her real reason for doing this? It's not just, she's a good person doing the right thing. It's like, that's kind of boring. What if she is actually super mad at this guy and wants to hurt him, and she's taking away his most valuable thing, which is these 5 women. So yes, she's doing the right thing, but kind of for the wrong fucked up reasons.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah, girl, that was good to get in there and really kind of noodle around and figure out what would make this work better for you and better for the movie. Just interesting.
And her choice of how, I know there was a collaboration about how she decided she was going to look, including shaving her head, which she said was fantastic because where they filmed it was so freaking hot.
God, she did look fucking stunning.
You shave someone completely bald and basically put black makeup around her eyes, and you're just like, I don't know, damn girl, good. You still look good. So, but that was a way also.
And only half an arm. I mean, still,
I know,
you're killing it.
That's green screening, and that takes a lot of effort as well as the actor to remember that you're dealing with that and the continuity and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of people, that cemented her position as oh my gosh, she's an action hero.
Big box office action star.
Yeah. Oh, she can do everything. So, and I think that also because, she was not playing the damsel in distress. She was basically saving the damsels in distress.
Yeah.
It also showed her as a fierce warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there was the Huntsman Winter's War. Because they did such great numbers on the first Huntsman, they came back, that's what they do.
That's what they do.
2016, a franchise. Okay, because I don't think she'd really been part of something that was movie part 2 or a franchise yet.
Yeah.
She revived her role, which you're like, I thought you were dead. No, we're going to bring her back. We're going to figure out magically how to make it work.
Oh, it's handy when there's magic.
Oh, yeah.
Wait,
so
we have a cast of really attractive, great actors. Did we kill all of them?
What? And,
magic.
And Emily Blunt plays her sister in it, which really the origin story of the relationship, is this Frozen? I'm so confused. But Chris Hemsworth was in it again because the original movie had
Kristen Stewart.
Thank you. She was not in this one.
Right.
So it was Emily Blunt, and you had one of my other favorite actresses of the last, 10 or 15 years.
Jessica Chastain.
Thank you. Just boys jump in there. Awesome. So I didn't do as well. Still very good, and she was gorgeous in it. And because I think she was basically resurrected, she was more evil. So great.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes, you get magically resurrected and you're more of a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. Spoiler alert. I don't think she can be resurrected. The second one. So, but totally gorgeous. So actually there was an animation film that I really liked, Kubo and the Two Strings, 2016 as well. Awesome, highly worth watching, and she plays a voice in it.
Voice of mother, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't see The Last Face. I don't know if anybody else did. It was directed by Sean Penn, who then she started dating. So that's where it's of note. But I talked about franchise, right? The Huntsman. Mm-hmm. She jumped into, which is not debatable, one of the largest franchises in movie history. Shockingly, the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Right.
Well, so
she can drive.
Well, I think that was probably a huge attraction for Vin Diesel, who's this is really his vehicle. Ed, come on, pun intended.
I
really
hear you. You could put the brakes on the puns. I can put the brakes on the puns. It's fine.
I got to go speeding right toward them.
Oh,
okay,
God,
anyways.
Wow.
So
you're spinning out on this right now.
Wow.
So she played the character Cypher. This movie, you guys, made over $1 billion.
Well, I love that she talked about. Yeah, she talked about in an interview, she doesn't like the idea that there's any kind of stigma about being in big franchise movies. She's like, they're great. I wanted to be in this movie. I love these kind of movies.
Yeah.
I mean, like, come on. She said she doesn't like the idea that there's any kind of, oh, you're a sellout as an actor if you're in. Like, no. She's like, no.
You wake up people. Do you know how the industry keeps me in the industry and we keep having movie theaters and we don't want movie theaters to go away? You need some of these huge movies to be able to play in movie theaters, because then hopefully those movie theaters stay open for, although maybe shorter runs, other movies get a chance to be in there.
Well, and often these do so incredibly well across the globe.
Universal has literally survived because of off the series the last 20 years.
Yeah,
I mean, like, it is insane.
And they can't do other things if they can't survive. So don't be down on these big franchises.
No. There's
good for her. I love
for
that
everything.
I love that she was like, no, you can do anything and everything, and no one should give you a hard time about it.
Speaking of doing everything and everything, once again, following with at least 2 films a year, follows up with one of the hottest freaking roles, which I love, a female assassin.
Oh, yeah.
That somehow, knock her down and she'll get up 100 freaking times. Atomic Blonde.
Yeah.
First of all, just for the fashion.
Well, stunts and fashion and fights, so many fights.
And Epsom salt baths, because you got to heal after these fight scenes. They're hyper surreal. Because they remind me of now what was our John Wick and all those type of films where you're like, this is not possible.
How could you keep
going? Yeah. So yes, there's that element, but she's so stylized. The fighting, the choreography that she pulls off is incredible, because they're very long sequences, some of these fight scenes.
Yeah.
So that she beyond pulls it off.
I do think
it's back to the origin of 2 Days in the Valley. I mean, this is like the complete evolution of it, really, quite honestly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous. So
and super sexy. I mean, aside from the fashion, but also the love interest in this, that whole thing is very, very sexy.
Yep. And so that was 2017. She also, I think she was a producer on it as well. So that is like, once again, like, I want to do this film, and if myself being a producer on it is going to help it happen the way we want it to happen, I'm going to do it. And also, I love when it's all over Europe, right? Where it's like you're not exactly sure where in Europe it is sometimes. Was it mostly Germany?
Yeah, I mean, this is because it's, the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989.
So good. The music was incredible, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at John.
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, look, you're citing all these things. Again, it's in 1989, so they took advantage of this time period and, did it in the right, fun way.
So good. And this is what she does. So she follows up this just stunner with a complete pivot, which I went to the movie premiere, Tully, which is now her second film, with Diablo Cody as the writer and Jason Reitman as the director.
Right.
And it's really about a woman in the throngs of postpartum depression.
Right.
So I went to the premiere of it because you can go back, kind of like you're talking about Arrested Development, Ed. There was a show called After Lately, which was Chelsea Lately's sort of behind the scenes scripted, and it would show the writers, her producers, Chelsea herself, the absurdity of trying to put on a late night talk show and your cast and crew around it. And Charlize was like one of her friends who, like, the episode was like, she came out for drinks with them and like would not fucking leave.
They're actually friends in real life.
Yeah, but it was almost like they're like, how do we get rid of her? Oh my God. Like,
that's funny.
And I think she catches them talking about her. Like, that is where you go, you have a sense of humor about yourself, right? So she did a couple episodes with Chelsea Handler because she knew her personally and came on. And, like I said, it was like the cast and crew's like, why does she want to hang with us? It was very funny. So here is the movie Tully. And one of the writers on Chelsea Lately, my good friend Heather McDonald, gets invited to the premiere event. She goes, do you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I hadn't really heard about it. So, you're watching, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard to watch, because if you have a baby, there's a lot of a crying baby in it, which can practically give you PTSD. And it just can take you back to moments of motherhood where you feel alone, despondent. Like, I never had true postpartum, but it is... The first year is a really, no matter who you are, it's very difficult. So you were really feeling for her character, and she went for it once again, physically, like gaining weight, letting herself kind of go. And there's a twist at the end, which if you're going to watch the movie, I'm not going to blow it. That is just as much heartbreaking. It truly is. So she went all into this performance. She was a producer on it as well. Mm-hmm. So the after party got to meet her and her mom, and we kind of stood, and actually one of the other moms from my son's school is friends with her mom. So I even had another entree in that was like natural. So we're all standing around talking. And you just cannot stop yourself from looking at her. You're like, you are that good looking.
She is stunning. Yeah.
You are pretty freaking perfect, whatever your definition of that is. And charming and funny and sweet. And her mom was there with her. Very nice. She was there fully supporting. Ivan Reitman was there too. God rest his soul. But he was there to support his son. I was very honored to be there. And the movie is very good. I think, it's in your own home to watch it probably now on a streaming service, is more probably in a big movie theater. It's more intimate.
Yeah. I think what was interesting to me when I heard some of the press around this movie, she said that basically Jason Reitman pitched her the movie when she had just adopted her second child and was a baby and was like, oh yeah, I get this story. And I have mom friends who really had postpartum depression issues. She said,
I know who this woman is.
Yeah, she said she committed to the project before it was even written because she knew what Diablo Cody was going for in the script, and she trusted the team and was like in. But so interesting timing wise how things can work out like that. It's like, she was in the middle of kind of this motherhood thing, with a small baby at home.
She gives a great, very strong performance, fully committed. Now, the next couple films that come along, she's doing something that's very smart. If you start a production company, which she has, and her production company is called
Denver and Delilah,
named after her two now passed on puppies.
Thank you. So then she starts to do, hey, I can't do everything, but I can lend my name, I don't know, potentially finances.
Well, producing is its own job and thing, and you don't have to be in everything, but you can push projects forward.
Yep. So The Private War, which was starring an actress that John and I really like.
Rosamund Pike.
Yeah. So, and that's what I love too. Oh, great. You're willing to produce another film where it's a female lead and you're not in it. I like that. That shows support. Then there was one called... It's Murder Mystery, which was a Netflix. It was one of the kind of the first ones, 2019, to go like, hey, we're not even trying to go to the movie theater. It's going to be straight to streaming, and it's brand new, starring A-list celebrities, like just that element.
Yeah, no, right. Because Adam Sandler had already been doing movies on there, but this
that was
one
his deal.
Felt a little bit more A-list, actual. Should be in a theater, but it's on Netflix.
I highly recommend it, especially if you have a family of middle schoolers and up. It's fun.
A fun movie.
It's fun.
There's supposedly going to be another one. It just hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Who knows? But
their chemistry was great, Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler, but she was an executive producer on it.
So this is in 2019, and we have two other credits. Well, actually, 3 credits that are in 2019. We've got Long Shot,
which I actually loved.
I loved Long Shot.
Now, once again, I don't buy that,
Just move on.
Yeah, okay, all right. She is great in it. Her co-star is
Seth Rogen, and he's hilarious and holds up his end of the deal.
They both are fantastic, and let's just say there is definitely a fiction element to it.
But I think that's the whole point of it, that it's like, it's a long shot that this schlubby guy would end up with this goddess.
Well, and she produced it, which I will say, I think if she didn't produce it, I don't know if someone like that could have cast that role.
Well, it's hilarious because they did a lot of press when this movie was out, and they were so funny. The two of them together, I'm like,
because
I believe
the general reaction was how I'm reacting right now. People were like, was seeing the poster, and the
poster was not good.
That was part of the problem.
Was the problem.
They said the poster was not good, and they would talk about it. So I actually thought their chemistry was awesome, and I saw a bunch of the press too. They would talk about the marketing of it. They were hilarious during it.
They were so good.
She has clearly a great sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So then Addams Family, which how can you not love, but that was the animated version, which, hey, if you're a mom, animation, way to go. Then a huge movie kind of just in the zeitgeist of the Me Too movement and when everything was happening with Fox and Roger Ailes and all that, Bombshell.
Yeah, Bombshell.
Charlize was playing Megyn Kelly, which was really supposed to be based on what was happening to her at Fox. So just fascinating, and talk about right on the pulse of everything that was going on. Produced on that as well. And the next one she produced on that I really loved was another straight to Netflix, but now we're in the pandemic. It's 2020, so you are like, hell yes, if there's a new movie that looks of a certain caliber of quality, right? The Old Guard.
Oh, so good.
Loved it.
Once again, she's playing a badass / a goddess.
Yeah.
And
And I don't think there was any romance in this one, if I'm remembering it correctly. It was just like, there might be some undertones of an ex or something, but it was like the mission of like what they're trying to accomplish. It was directed by a woman. She's one of the producers on it. There is a second in the works, so fantastic. And we're like I said, we're almost getting into like, she is part of franchises, which, they always say that's the gravy, man. That is like the money that you're going to retire on and probably support her production company.
Yeah. So in terms of franchises or part twos, we've definitely got Old Guard part 2 coming up and Atomic Blonde coming up.
Oh, cannot wait for Atomic Blonde.
She'll be in the next Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the next movie she did in 2021 was another Fast and Furious.
Good for her.
It made over $700 million.
Oh, wow.
During 2021, which you're like, were the movie theaters even open? How did they do that? It's crazy.
I do want to go back super quick and mention that she's a executive producer on Mindhunter. I don't know if you guys are watching. It's all about serial killers and the FBI sort of creating their unit to understand the mind of a serial killer. Anyway, I love that she executive produces that. And in one interview, she said that she really is a huge fan of true crime, which is so, I'm like, oh, that's what's going on there. And I wonder if that actually goes back to her playing the main character in Monster. That that's also part of being interested in true crime. She says when she watches TV, that's what she likes to watch. She watches My 600-Pound Life and shows where it's like real people and real emotion and real things.
So she's not perfect because true crime is the worst.
Very horrible.
No, I'm actually going to tell you, having been in an actress in theater, most of the time to be able to create a character, you almost, if you see something in real life, right? So you're talking about hyper situations like a crime happened or they're living a very much on the edge type of lifestyle. Those are where you can take either a nuance or a whole personality from and go like, I can do something with that. Because going back to you saying that she doesn't like to work method and she likes to leave it when she...
kind of spur of the moment.
Right.
Not spur of the moment. I mean, I believe that she does a lot of research and work, but she, in the moment, absolutely. Really allows herself to just like be spontaneous.
But the way you're able to do that is to have a catalog of characters or choices and that you can pull from.
Yeah, and understanding human behavior.
Yeah, and weaving them through yourself. But you're only limited to what you expose yourself to, right? And if it's based in real life, they always say sometimes true life is stranger than fiction. So you watch these type of shows, we all do now, and you go like, what? I don't believe that. That is where I think she draws some of this from. You might not even know you do it sometimes. You remember this little trait, you remember this little, tick someone had, and it gets in there. So that doesn't surprise me if that's kind of what she likes to watch.
It also really is, that's real people.
And I'll tell you this as an actress, then you never feel like you're stealing someone else's bit, okay?
Yeah.
Because if you admire and love another actress, you don't really want to take any on of their traits,
how they do it.
How they do it. So if you're watching someone in real life that, whether it's current, past, whatever, you go like, that is something like you're basing off on a real human, filtering it through your own system, and you don't feel like I'm copying Meryl Streep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised by that. It's funny. Someone remind me, I watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, of course, because of my son Ethan. I don't remember her in it. What was she?
She was in like a post-credit scene. She shows up for 1 second, and we don't really know what's happening. Although apparently that character could be important in the Doctor Strange.
Okay, because I for sure stayed for it because immediately Ethan has
Everybody
to check.
knows you have to stay.
So I did. So all right. So I'm not crazy. I'm like, I don't remember her like in the movie. Okay, got it. So that was her most recent credit, was an after a post-credit scene, part of the now in the Marvel world, which believe me, that's a good one to get into, honey. Go for it. So now she's got multiple things in production, like you mentioned, the Old Guard 2 and
Atomic Blonde 2.
Atomic Blonde. And
a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and that's Denver and Delilah Productions. Kudos to you. Please keep producing because we are huge fans. Is there any credit or anything we didn't mention or some interesting little anecdote?
I have one little thing to talk about from Bombshell, that the makeup process was really interesting because I guess...
Oh, right.
I mean, she doesn't actually...
So she's playing Megyn Kelly.
She doesn't actually look like Megyn Kelly, which, some people are better with faces and go like, well, no, not at all. Or like, why is it important? That she look so much like Megyn Kelly. But I guess the makeup artist who is very good with prosthetics, had been working on Mindhunter, and she reached out to him. She knew he was like really, really good at this specific thing of minimal prosthetics to transform someone into the look of another real person instead of, because this is what they're doing in Bombshell. And she said the first makeup test, she was like, yeah, I looked like a young Glenn Close, which was good, but not Megyn Kelly. But she said the second makeup test, because they put prosthetics on her jaw, they did like this weird little thing to open her nostrils. They took like a cast of the inside of her nose. Okay. I know. This was so fascinating. I was like, what? The inside of her nose to like spread her nostrils, and then they added a little tip to her nose, and then they did an eye thing. And she said the first set of makeup, the other problem was she couldn't really move her face enough. Like as an actor, you kind of need to be able to move your face. But then the second one, they were like, oh, okay. And she said, and then I really took like a deep breath, like, okay, this is going to work. I'm going to look enough like her, and I can change my voice and change the way I move. And it's like, it was very
because there's less flexibility when you are playing someone that exists in real life that you can be compared to. So then you kind of have to get within the wheelhouse of it, whether voice, look, or,
It was interesting too,
yourself.
She said it was a hard part to play because she was conflicted about a lot of the things that Megyn Kelly sort of did, in terms of when she came forward or, how she handled things. It was really interesting, but she was so impressed by the script that she was like, okay, I have to do this. So,
well, the one other thing I'll mention, because she loves to drive, she did executive produce Hyperdrive, which was like her getting to drive like really cool cars and like the whole
Good for her.
It's like someone living their passion, which is awesome. And she she has delved a little bit into television as executive producer or producer as well. So she is I think she's gonna keep up her trend of having at least one or two blockbusters a year. And you know what else I love? She is now in her mid-40s, a mother of two, and is still working. And she hasn't quote unquote like aged out. She's playing very interesting roles, and because she's producing them and controlling them, I hope that goes on for another 40 years.
Yeah.
I did have one additional thing to add in, is that she's been doing a charity for almost 20 years, the Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project.
Oh, it's an awesome program.
It's an awesome program. And just catching up on all this and finding out about it, I was watching a video and I'm like, is that Chelsea Handler? Man, I didn't pick that up in my research.
Yeah, she went to Africa. I mean, obviously, she's from South Africa, but in Africa, and specifically in South Africa, there's a very high rate of HIV infection. And her philanthropy organization is dedicated towards education of young people, 10 to 20-year-olds, because that's really, there's a problem with them understanding how to protect themselves. And, so it's all about that, which is amazing. And she went on a trip, and Chelsea Handler went with her. It was part of her team. Ed and I must have watched the same thing, where they were talking about what they're working on and that they work with grassroots organizations and try and find different ways to engage that younger population and spread educational stuff. And, you're watching this video and you're like, wait, is that Chelsea Handler? Oh, yes, it is. Okay. Interesting. They're real friends, and it's real cool.
Well, it speaks to her, the A-list status is well-deserved. It also speaks to her loyalty to friends, of why she works repeatedly with the same people, or, visits them again and again to work with them. And you don't have a career this long in this town if you're a jerk.
Yeah, a jerk.
So clearly not that reputation. Hardworking. She's one of those people that like, maybe the project isn't great, but actually looking through her page, it was like, no, there's not a lot of clunkers in here. Really, very few. And she is always good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can't control how things do.
She hasn't been the reason there was a clunker.
Yeah, no.
No.
You got to work with Ben Affleck. Let's not talk about the movie that you're in with him, but it's fine. You get to work with him. It's great. That's another A-list.
Yeah. She's consistently been a actress who commits to her work, delivers the highest level of performance that she can, and now on the back end as a producer, it's amazing because she can continue to make sure that happens for her. So Charlize Theron, Academy Award winning actress, producer.
Yeah, you're a badass, awesome lady.
I mean, I don't think even I realized that the career was like 25 plus years deep. And I certainly don't think I realized it was an average of 2 films every year.
Well, also, I would have assumed I missed a whole slew of soap opera TV time when you were early or younger. Like, no, I caught you right at the beginning. Oh, okay, I've been a fan since the beginning. All right.
So we are huge fans of you, Charlize Theron, if you ever listen to this. or those of you who share our deep admiration for her. So this has been an episode of Huge Fans. Please follow us on all social media at Huge Fans Podcast. We'd love to get your feedback. Was there something that we missed? I mean, there's a lot that she's done.
I don't think so. Actress, producer, philanthropist, kick-ass, awesome lady.
Mom.
Someone did ask if she's going to go for the EGOT, and she's like, oh, I can't sing.
I don't know. Baz Luhrmann, I'm calling you out. He seems to be able to make anybody sing. So, all right. Thank you so much for listening to
Huge Fans.